Hello and welcome to What America's Thinking, where we discuss key elections, demographic trends, and public opinion. I'm Rafael Bernal.
And I'm Julia Manchester. Tuesday night, President Biden delivered the State of the Union address to the 118th Congress. Going into the annual speech was a Washington Post ABC News poll found that 6 in 10 Americans believe that the president hasn't accomplished much during his time in office. Broken down by party, 77% of Democrats believe the president has accomplished a great deal, while 93% of Republicans say he has not done much.
But following the State of the Union address, a CNN flash poll found that 71% of viewers believe that President Biden's proposals would move America in the right direction, and 29% said he's heading in the wrong direction. And when it came to how the State of the Union address itself was received, 72% of watchers said they reacted positively, 28% viewed the speech negatively, and 10% had a very negative view. So do you think he won or lost, viewership, rating, independence by giving this speech?
You know, it's a good question on independence. Right now, though, I think as we're approaching his re-election announcement sometime this spring, what was an important goal of his was to rile up that Democratic base. And it seemed that with the State of the Union, he was able to at least put to rest somewhat this murmuring or rumbling about a potential primary challenger. We don't know who that would be. We just hear primary challenge kind of thrown out there by those in the media, maybe some progressives. But I think President Biden got really feisty. That's a word that I heard a lot of Democrats use to describe him. And it's interesting because Kevin McCarthy sort of hit back at the president, afterwards saying he was trying to rile up Republicans in the chamber. And you saw Republicans very much feed into that. Well, I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily for the president, because we have seen him go to Wisconsin and Florida this week and talk about the issue that riled up Republicans, and that was the potential of cutting Social Security and Medicare. And I think it's worked for him in really appealing to the Democratic base. Now, the question I have is, will that issue be enough to sway independents? We do know that Democrats campaigned on that issue in 2022, but I think there were a lot of other factors involved that contributed to their success.
Yeah, and I think, he did rile up Republicans right when he wanted. He showed more of a mastery of the stage than he's shown pretty much at any time in his career. He used to give a lot of angry speeches on the Senate floor. I think he took a little bit of that Senate floor energy, took it to the House. And the interesting thing for me is this speech's viral moment is when the speech giver heckled his audience, not the other way around. There was heckling both ways.
There was heckling both ways. And, not to use a cliche, but it's sort of depicts the state of our union as being very divided, obviously. But a question I have for you is, and we talked about this in our conversations with Congressman Diaz-Balart and Congressman Gonzalez, but were you surprised he didn't bring up immigration or even border security or go in depth on that too much? Because that's something Republicans have used to attack him. And it seems like during a State of the Union address, that's a perfect opportunity to confront that head on and say, this is what we're doing. I did hear him talk about fentanyl a little bit. It's not like he completely ignored it, but it seemed like he sort of glossed over it, maybe?
So, yes, I wrote a story about it. He just, he dipped his toe, basically. He had to give lip service to the issue because you can't not talk about immigration. It is a huge, talking about 2024, it is a huge electoral issue. But he does know, he is aware that Congress has been terrible at legislating on immigration for decades, and he knows that a divided Congress probably won't have much better luck than the last, 15 Congresses?
Right.
It's unlikely. What was interesting to me also, and I'd like to get your take, was the responses to this address, and the Republican responses, of which there were two major ones. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, governor of Arkansas, I think she went full MAGA, right?
Yeah, she did go full MAGA, but at the same time, I thought her speech was sort of, smart in a way because she went full MAGA, but she also very much emphasized we need new leadership in the Republican Party. So I remember, in our Slack channel that night, in the State of the Union Slack channel at the Hill, we were sort of talking about, was that a jab at Trump? Or did she was she playing both lanes because she said that? And then later on, she talked about her time in the Trump administration. So, I thought that was interesting. And I thought she, very much walked that very fine line.
Do you think, I saw a lot of criticism from the left, granted. Did she treat the age difference situation, did she treat that tastefully?
The age difference as in new blood in the Republican Party, young blood.
I'm the youngest. The difference between me and the president is I'm the youngest governor around. I'm 40 years old. The president, he's the oldest president ever. He's 80. Like really remarking like, this guy's 80, I'm 40.
Yeah, I kind of think she was saying what the quiet part out loud, or maybe the not so quiet part for a lot of Americans, because there are questions about the president's age. You hear Democrats who say, I like the president, I voted for the president, but I worry about his age. So I think it's a question everyone's asking. And in terms of her being so young, look, she's clearly touting herself. And, to be fair, this is a speech, that either the response speech, that's, they call it the worst job in politics sometimes, because we all know Marco Rubio taking a drink of water, Joe Kennedy and his very moisturized lips there a few years ago. Yeah. People are nitpicky, but it's a speech that can propel you into the national spotlight because we know that Marco Rubio ran for president. He's obviously a major player in the Senate. Nikki Haley is going to run for president. So, it's helped propel her. So this is very much her trying to get herself onto that national stage. And, unlike Marco Rubio, who at the time Florida was a bit more purple than it is now, Sarah Huckabee Sanders is coming from a very red state. So she wants to, she easily won election. She easily won her primary. So I think she's trying to maybe sell herself to, other voters who aren't necessarily MAGA Republicans. And maybe that age question was a part of that strategy.
Speaking of age, there was another response. It was delivered in Spanish. It was delivered by Representative Juan Ciscomani, the new guy from Arizona. He was born in Mexico.
The first place, I'm so proud of our colleague Juan Ciscomani. He did an amazing job. That's him. He's just a positive. He's a fighter, but he's got this amazing positive attitude. He is, by the way, a great example of the American dream. He and his family, and so he reflects that every time he speaks, every time he does anything, and I think we saw that during the response. Just like Tony, who's also another example of the American dream. Juan Ciscomani lives it and reflects it every single day, and I think you see that in his attitude.
I thought it was brilliant in a way, and it very much and I'm sort of surprised. I mean, obviously it was geared towards Spanish language viewers, but I'm curious to see what Republicans will do to up Ciscomani's profile. I remember when he was running last cycle in 2022, the NRCC was really pushing him as a candidate to watch. And unfortunately for Ciscomani, I think a lot of the candidates who maybe fit into this question of candidate quality, who weren't quality candidates, got more coverage in, the national English-speaking media here in the U.S. But I think he is certainly someone to watch, especially as Republicans try to continue to make inroads with Spanish language voters.
I mean, they're building a Republican Hispanic bench. You have, Tony Gonzalez. He's a sophomore Republican. He's already co-chair of the Congressional Hispanic Conference with Mario Diaz-Balart, a veteran of Republican Hispanic politics. And there was one more thing that's interesting about the Ciscomani response. It's a trend that Republicans have had in their messaging toward Hispanics for probably the last 5 or 6, maybe even 10 years. They will take a very aggressive English language approach, now a very MAGA English language approach, and the Spanish language approach will be more tailored to a community that's really concerned about the economy, really concerned about education, healthcare, and wants to see governance, wants to see contrast and like better governance, and that part of that is making deals, and that's why Ciscomani, while critical of Biden, he didn't really strike out like in a MAGA way.
Yeah, and I'm curious, look, obviously Republicans have a ton of opportunities to promote Ciscomani, maybe promote his response, even though it was in Spanish, but to English-speaking voters. But he strikes me as the candidate, and listening to his address, it strikes me as a message that would play well with independent voters, particularly maybe college-educated suburban voters. I know we talk about that quite a bit, but this idea of compromise, this idea of saying, look, the economy is not doing well under President Biden, though Democrats would have their own counter to that. But it seems like that's more of a successful message to swing voters than going full MAGA.
Yeah, I think it's not a coincidence that you are describing Arizona's swing voters, the people who decide elections in that state. Yeah. So we'll have more of our interview with Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart and Tony Gonzalez next.